Okay, Atomic Habits, Chapter 7. That's what we will complete today. And I've already, you know, planned out my entire day today. It was one of the most productive first 3 hours of my, day in any of the days that I've had in the last 4 years. So I've just implemented I haven't implemented this one specifically, like the last chapter that we read, but I did implement like other stuff that I can track and so that I can improve my time management. So I have already done a lot of stuff today, um, and that already helps me feel good. So now let's get into chapter 7, and it's Secret to Self-Control. In 17, not 17, in 1971, as the Vietnam War was heading into its 16th year, damn, Congressman Robert Steele from Connecticut and Morgan Murphy from Illinois made a discovery that stunned the American public. While visiting the troops, they had learned that over 15% of U.S. soldiers stationed there were heroin addicts. Follow-up research revealed that 35% of service members in Vietnam had tried heroin, and as many as 20% were addicted. The problem was even worse than they had initially thought. The discovery led to a flurry of activity in Washington, including the creation of the Special Action Office of Drug Abuse Prevention under President Nixon to promote prevention and rehabilitation and to track addicted service members when they return home. Lee Robbins was one of the researchers in charge. In a finding that completely upended the accepted beliefs about addiction, Robbins found that when soldiers who had been heroin users returned home, only 5% of them became re-addicted within a year, and just 12% relapsed within 3 years. In other words, approximately 9 out of 10 soldiers who used heroin in Vietnam eliminated their addiction nearly overnight. This finding contradicted with the prevailing view at the time, which considered heroin addiction to be a permanent and irreversible condition. Instead, Robbins revealed that addictions could spontaneously dissolve if there was a radical change in the environment, a radical change in the environment, not just a change, a radical change. In Vietnam, soldiers spent all day surrounded by cues triggering heroin use. It was easy to access. They were engulfed by the constant stress of war. They built friendships with fellow soldiers who were also heroin users, and they were thousands of miles away from home. Once a soldier returned to the United States, though, he found himself in an environment devoid of those triggers. When the context changed, so did the habit. Compare the situation with that of a typical drug user. Someone becomes addicted at home or with friends, goes to clinic to get clean, which is devoid of all environmental stimuli that prompt their habit. It returns to their old neighborhood with all the previous cues that caused them to get addicted in the first place. It's no wonder that usually you see numbers that are the exact opposite of those in the Vietnam study. Typically, 90% of heroin users become re-addicted once they return home from rehab. The Vietnam studies ran counter to many of our cultural beliefs about bad habits because it challenged the conventional association of unhealthy behavior as a moral weakness. If you are overweight, a smoker, or an addict, you have been told your entire life that it is because you lack self-control. Maybe even that you are a bad person. The idea that a little bit of discipline would solve all your problems is deeply embedded in our culture. Recent research, however, shows something different. When scientists analyze people who appear to have tremendous self-control, it turns out those individuals aren't all that different from those who are struggling. Instead, disciplined people are better at structuring their lives in a way that does not require heroic willpower or self-control. In other words, they spend less time in tempting situations. So just changing the environment, changing the location pretty much can, maybe like just changing the environment in the way which can make it easy for you to be in that zone won't need discipline every single time from you, right? So if you, for example, if for me, if I need to understand, like if I have to get in the zone of being a disciplined person, being a focused, consistent, and mindful person, then I need to have an environment of my own where I can, curate the entire environment in such a way that I can practice that without me having to put effort from, by put effort in disconnecting from something else which is distracting, and then reconnecting with a non-distracting environment. If my entire environment is non-distracting, then I will be more focused anyways. But that also doesn't make it easy, right? Because you cannot just always change your environment. Environments and cues will be there. So how to actually solve that problem when changing the environment or structuring the environment that way is not always possible. Let's see. Okay, so the people who with the best self-control are typically the ones who need to use it the least. It's easy to practice self-restraint when you don't have to use it very often. So yes, perseverance, grit, and willpower are essential to success, but the way to improve these qualities is not by wishing you were a more disciplined person, but by creating a more disciplined environment. This counterintuitive idea makes even more sense once you understand what happens when a habit is formed in the brain. A habit that has been encoded in the mind is ready to be used whenever the relevant situation arises. When Patty Olwell, a therapist from Austin, Texas, started smoking, she would often light up while riding horses with a friend. Eventually, she quit smoking and avoided it for years. She had also stopped riding. Decades later, she hopped on a horse again and found herself craving a cigarette for the first time in forever. The cues will stay internalized. She just hadn't been exposed to them in a long time. Once a habit has been encoded, the urge to act follows whenever the environmental cues appear. This is one reason behavior change techniques can backfire. Shaming obese people with weight loss presentation can make them feel stressed, and as a result, many people return to their favorite coping strategy, overeating. Showing pictures of blackened lungs to smokers lead to higher levels of anxiety, which drives many people to reach for a cigarette. If you're not careful about cues, you can cause the very behavior you want to stop. Bad behaviors are autocatalytic. Bad behaviors are autocatalytic. The process feeds itself. They foster the feelings they try to numb. You feel bad, so you eat junk food. Because you eat junk food, you feel bad. Watching television makes you feel sluggish, so you watch more television because you don't have the energy to do anything else. Worrying about, no, hold on. Yeah, once a habit, yeah, sorry. Yes, sir. Because you eat junk food, you feel very, bad. So watching television makes you feel sluggish, so you watch more television because you don't have any energy to do anything else. Worrying about your mental health makes you feel anxious, which causes you to smoke to ease your anxiety, which makes your health even worse, and soon you're feeling more anxious. It's a downward spiral, a runaway train of bad habits. Researchers refer to this phenomena as cue-induced wanting. Cue-induced wanting. Cue-induced wanting. Cue-induced wanting. Okay, as an external trigger. An external trigger causes a compulsive craving to repeat a bad habit. Once you notice something, you begin to want it. This process is happening all the time, often without us realizing it. Scientists have found that showing addicts a picture of cocaine for just 33 milliseconds stimulates the reward pathway in the brain that sparks the desire. This speed is too fast for the brain to consciously register. The addict, the addicts couldn't even tell you what they had seen, but they craved the drug all the same. Here's the punchline. You can break a habit, but you are unlikely to forget it. Once the mental grooves of habit has been carved into your brain, they are nearly impossible to remove entirely, even if they go unused for quite a while. And that means that simply resisting temptation is an ineffective strategy. Is it though? Is it always ineffective? It is hard to maintain a Zen attitude in a life filled with interruptions. It takes too much energy. In the short run, you can choose to overpower temptation. In the long run, we become a product of the environment that we live in. To put it bluntly, I have never seen someone consistently stick to positive habits in a negative environment. That's discouraging. A more reliable approach is to cut bad habits off at the source. One of the most practical ways to eliminate a bad habit is to reduce exposure to the cue that causes it. If you can't seem to get any work done, leave your phone in another room for a few hours. If you're continually feeling like you're not enough, stop following social media accounts that trigger jealousy and envy. If you're wasting too much time watching television, move the TV out of the bedroom. If you're spending too much money on electronics, quit reading reviews of the latest tech gear. If you're playing too many video games, unplug the console and put it in a closet after each use. This practice is an inversion of the first law of behavior change. Rather than make it obvious, you can make it invisible. I'm often surprised. Often surprised by how effective simple changes like these can be. Remove a single cue and the entire habit often fades away. A single cue. Self-control is a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. You may be able to resist temptation once or twice, but it's unlikely you can muster the willpower to override your desires every time. Instead of summoning a new dose of willpower whenever you want to do the right thing, your energy would be better spent optimizing your environment. This is the secret to self-control. Make the cues of your good habits obvious and the cues of your bad habits invisible. But just a quick question there, right? Something that I would think of is there has been times when I had, the triggers of any bad behavior or any like habits that I've had in the past. Let's say like I want to go out, I want to eat something, I want to eat junk, something, right? And I have resisted the temptation. What happens if we keep resisting the temptation? Of course, it's going to be difficult as compared to having a better environment, but I cannot change my country, right? Everywhere I go in this country, it's going to be the same. So I will have access to junk food. I'll have access to these things. Of course, I can already see improvement in when I'm going to the gym or meeting people like that who has the nutritional focus in their life. So, and also like whenever you start working out, when you are focusing on your health a lot, you anyway start avoiding stuff that actually dilutes the effort that you've already put. So that already helps you improve your food quality, like nutritional quality. But what happens if I get the trigger, I see the cue, get the trigger, and then I start to use my willpower to wait and write down and try to avoid it one day, and the second day, and the third day, and I try to persevere through it, and I don't fall to it, right? Of course, I might fall once again, but what if I keep doing that for a long time until this becomes obsolete? So there's two ways, from my perspective, there might be two ways to make something invisible. One is you just make the environment in such a way that the thing actually, the cue or the trigger becomes invisible. But then what happens if it becomes visible again? Like actually, have I actually made progress or have I just made an illusion of progress, right? Am I actually strong now? Am I more disciplined right now? Or am I just disciplined as an outcome of me not having the chance to be indisciplined? Whereas if on the other hand, if I have the chaos in front of me and then I train myself to avoid chaos or be calmer in that chaos, no matter how long it takes, or maybe I think my way of looking at it would be instead of trying to be good at a lot of things, I would just choose one thing to be good at for a long time and expose myself to this even more. And as a result of it, if I consciously put my effort into maybe like having patience or being calm in chaotic situations, then I would push myself more into chaos so that I can get exposure to naturally be less calm, but then I choose and I practice how to be more calm in a chaotic environment as an exposure to being in that situation. And I'm pretty sure that there's gonna be a time when I will be able to improve my calmness or be more calm, uh, despite of the situation. If I'm in the Himalayas, and I will all anyways be like, okay, I'm very calm. But what happens if I'm in a situation where frustration is like all around, like it's the norm right now? Can I be calm there? Because if I'm not, then what happens if that becomes the norm? Like if my life demands me to be in situations like that, then me changing the environment to be calmer is not going to help me. And especially if I cannot be calm, then I cannot lead people towards a meaningful future, right? And anywhere where any pursuit will have chaos. So I just maybe I haven't understood this entirely the right way, or maybe we have more or another perspective of this as well. So this might be the first step towards it, and then maybe there is another walk around so that we first of all start the progress, then the momentum gets built, and then we also come back and change the environment, like, tackle the environment as well, so that we never fall back to it. What if the worst behavior or the habit that you have is actually in your home, right? And you can never leave home. Like for example, my home, it's a very, very sacred thing. I'm very attached to it. Like I'm not gonna leave my home. If my bad habits are attached to my home, then I cannot just change my entire home in such a way that my cues disappear. I cannot disappear, make my cues disappear. So I have to work with it, right? So that's the answer. I don't have it yet in this one. Let me end it here. Cheers.